Bop, bop, bop. Now I got this here just to reorient y'all, and feel free to ask questions, interrupt. It's more fun if it's a conversation than just a monologue. Anyhow, so Kingston, right? Can you see the cursor?
Yes.
Excellent. I want to thank Ed for that. He taught us how to do that. Anyway, the cotton gin and the cotton the mill actually and the press are going to go back over in here. So just as a orientation, this was one of the first images that we pulled up, and this was back in the day when our dear friend Christopher was still around, and he took on the job of building that after he's already done 3 of the signature structures on the layout. And he got most of the cotton house done, and I finished that off, but he left this to do. I'm like, Jesus, why couldn't it be the other way around? Excuse me. Bad form. So Christopher is a finishing carpenter, I think you call it. He is so exact. I mean, he was taking months to build a structure, and I was going to ask him about like what's taken so long, and I thought, what's a nice way to say that, And I said, Christopher, I said, how long do you think it's going to take to finish this? And he's got his glasses. He pulls them down the end of his nose. He turns on his seat. He's got his hands up in the air because he's got stuff in his hands. And he looks at me. He says, Thomas, do you want me to build this structure? I said, got it. Okay, got it. So as I'm building this, I'm thinking about him and his exactness, and I didn't quite get it. However, we found, anyway, I'll leave it at that. So here's the spot on the layout. It's going to go in this area here. This is just north of Kingston. That's close up. There's the cotton house, and there's nothing more to say about that. So there that is. So I didn't like the fact that this was this complicated to build because of those angled pieces. And this is the only image I had. So everything was like, wow, it's all guesswork, for a lot of it. And then I forget who it was, but somebody told me about this video. It's a fantastic video if you really want to know the ins and outs of how the cotton press works. Tommy Tucker is the guy that built it. And this is like within the last, 15, 20 years. And he shows you all the ins and outs of it. I'm not going to show that, but I just wanted you to see. This was the image I decided to go with, not only because of the video and the quality of this picture, but the posts were straight. I have to minimize my thoughts about angles, as it shows there.
In that picture with the house, it looks like, I assume cotton house meant like warehouse. Looks like it's got gears in there.
Yeah, the actual gin was pretty small. And I believe whatever that's connected to is on the second floor. And I'm not sure if it's working the gin. I don't know, because the gin is not big at all. It's smaller than one of those openings in the bottom. It's a tiny thing, but good question. So
it would make sense that the gin would be in that house.
Yes.
Before they use the cotton press.
Right. Exactly. So deciphering the press, I was looking at this from lots of angles, and did some drawings of it, and it's fascinating because there were no drawings, although I made some, and let me just go to the next one here before I go speaking out of turn. This was the upper section, and this was the one that was kind of marginally difficult to figure out because of this box, and then you have the screw, which is actually kind of behind this post. You'll see it in a second. And here's the dude, that's the loading section right off that platform. That's the drawing Christopher made. And this is what I worked off of. And then this is the two, I don't know what you call them, the two main supports. And those are 12 by 12 basswood. Yeah, and I was kind of I used Chris's drawing as the basis. And then as time went on, I had to just make stuff up. I love these little brass clamps, right? Just to hold it together. Let's see. Next, I was looking at how these were connected, these four, and what it would take to, what's the basics for all of these beams and structures or structural parts. And then I decided just to continue to use the 12 bys as two of the main supports. And you'll see in the next one, maybe. Yeah, so we're just clamping this together. Now, the interesting thing is that, no, well, yeah, okay, so there's some framework put onto it. What I noticed that I was not considering in this was these end pieces. So I figured, oh, of course, they probably would have notched these beams and trimmed off this beam with a tongue, right, guys?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let me put those in. That shouldn't be too hard. So I made some pieces, notched them, and at least it looks like it's a tongue sticking out. All right, so here we have the base of the front of the back and the front of the walls that would house the cotton once it's being pressed into a bale. I got a question about that for you guys. Remind me later if I don't say anything about canvas. And then the internal framing, I was kind of guessing. I didn't know if this was going to work or what have you, but I knew that the upper box was smaller than the lower box. So these were the two that I built for the upper section. And then I wasn't sure how I was going to connect those yet. And I found this, I think it's 3/8 of an inch dowel that I was going to use for the screw. So this is built in the upper box. Those are the two frame pieces I showed you earlier. These I think are like 2x6s, and then framed out the inside of it. And then that's the placement eventually for it. But you're going to see the mistake I made with that. This is the planking to house the other two sides of the lower box where the bale is actually pressed. I found some of these shards from plaster castings I had done in the past, and I decided let me use those as mounts, and that looked pretty cool. This is going into the roof now, and it's a hip roof, and fortunately there's a friend of ours in our local model railroad club that just did a clinic on how to build these, so it was perfect timing. So all I did first was build a frame 12 by 12, but I realized when you do that, it's not really 12 by 12. You lose a foot because you got to move the two side pieces in. Christopher would not have missed that. Anyhow, I had to just reshape that. And then it's pretty easy. Just measure the length from one side to the other. Decide how high you want it to be. And this is 3 feet. And then just draw this out on a cardstock like this and mark your 3-foot point. Draw your 2 lines, cut it, and then you got your supports. And that's them in position. And this is laying over the roof, of which is much measuring and shit. Stuff I did, you can see it's still off. I'm like, all right. So I made an adjustment. That's why it looks cleaner over here. I move on. However, there's still I got it. All right, Chris, leave me alone. So simple. I was thinking, okay, what's the simplest way to, I just took the X-Acto and cut the trim off. And I just dropped some Type Bond. Love that stuff. So I decided to make the screw on my own. It actually, the one on the right looks like crap, but the one on the left looks great. So I tried a couple of things. First thing I did was worked off the drawing just to get an approximate angle of these. So I just penciled what I thought were about the notches. And then I thought, let me try the tiniest Dremel I have. grinder, but it was making them kind of wide. And I started using the blade instead because it gave me more control. So I'm opening these up, and I just got to go back down here and open those up. And then this is the roof assembled, and then the whatever those pieces are that come down from here, the beams that connects to the mule, that's the next piece to do as well, shingles and whatnot, but you'll see that. So that's pretty much it. This is after the first coat. It really does look better than that. Man, that looks like, anyway. What I was saying, yeah, so this is the first coat. I use a Vallejo, old wood and new wood staining. So there's like 5 coats of stuff that go on here. But I decided, I wanted some contrast. And when I looked at Tommy Tucker's, there was a bit of a reddish thing to it again, but I'm going to let this be the first cut at what that's going to look like from a painting standpoint. And then Marty Vaughn, Christopher says, I need figures like these. So Marty Vaughn, this is the images that we sent Marty, and this is Marty's creations. So he is just remarkable scratch building these things. There we go. Cool. That's it, gents. And there that's the, yep. I went by that frame actually a little bit underneath, and these are the posts I'm talking about. So the mules can walk this thing around. Here we go. That's the show, gentlemen.
So there was, looks like it was only one mule.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other arm for?
They would take him off that one and put it on the other one and have him go in reverse to unscrew the screw. They only needed one mule because it's either going up or down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to me, it seems odd that they had 2 arms on it if they only used one mule.
Yeah. Why didn't? That's a great question. That's a great question, Ed. I don't know. I don't think Tucker mentions that in his video.
And it looks like the other arm is different.
Really? You're talking about in that picture?
Yeah, and yeah, slide 27.
And the
Or at
wood,
the beginning, because
Oh,
yeah,
you
it
mean,
looks like it has something else on it.
yeah,
The counterweight.
Yeah,
Ah, all right.
good
Yeah.
one.
Otherwise the screw would be unbalanced.
Right. I wonder if Tommy has, let me see.
Good catch, DC.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always an engineering reason for engineering.
Yeah, I think there's a counterweight on Tucker's as well. I think there is.
Yeah,
When,
very small. one.
when you watch the video, you can see it. I highly recommend it if you're at all of interest. It was interesting because what he was saying too is that it took 30 to 35 baskets of cotton to make one bale, which would be about 500 pounds. And that in a good day, they could do, oh my God, what was it? 4 or 5. He said, but that's if there was food and you had a good crew. But anyway, it sounds like, yeah, just incredibly labor intensive. My question was, you forgot to ask me about the canvas. Did they lay canvas, you think, in the box as the cotton's coming down, or it was so tightly packed they just rolled it out onto canvas?
my guess is they put the canvas in the box and ropes first, then canvas.
Yeah. That's what I would figure.
Or whatever they bound it with. I assume they bound it with rope. I don't think they would have had the technology for metal bands.
Mm-mm.
Twine
Right.
Okay.
made out of hemp.
Yeah. Fascinating. I would love to see the inside of that thing.
And that is virtually the same device that makes hay bales. And the hay bales are about that big.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, it's just an Archimedes screw compressing. And,
Right.
But yeah, because I'm in the process of working on a model of the hay barns in Alexandria. And started wandering through there. And dang, those hay bales are big. And this is a kid that used to buck hay when I was in high school.
Now they're intimidating.
Yeah, those were intimidating.
They're not the same size though.
They are.
The modern day
They
one.
are.
No, right.
They go all
They're a
the way.
miniature version of it.
Yeah.
If you look at the shot inside the hay barns in Alexandria, they are one bale per wagon,
Wow.
and they weigh about the same.
Wow.
Yeah, and they shipped. I mean, if you look at a few episodes ago, you had a picture. Somebody pulled up the picture of the hay docks and was wondering where it was because, well, if you look at the real image, you can see the Capitol in the background because it's Alexandria docks. But the hay bales are up about 3 stories high.
Yeah, I know, man. That's the thing was when there's those photos of the period, and you're on the river and you see the large boats and you see these cotton bales stacked like 4. I'm like fascinated. I love to see the production of that, how they managed to do that. What a remarkable. They must have. So the ship itself probably had its own crane, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Well,
on the front of the river boats, you see those booms that
Right.
stick out. Those were cranes.
Yep. That'd be a fun scene to model. Oh,
Oh, there's your Vicksburg again.
yeah, right. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, but you can do a lot smaller boat on the Chattahoochee.
Well, the question I have is, how did, after the bales got to their destination, what did they do to, I guess,
Unveil it and process it
process it?
into textiles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they just went directly to the mills, and I don't know exactly what the mills did to prepare the cotton for weaving. Anybody?
Spin it.
Out large combs.
Spin. Okay.
You pull it out into the fiber. You pull the fiber out into long strands, and then you just start rolling through it.
Right. And spinning it.
Enough cotton gins when I was a kid. I mean, they were all around town.
I don't know. Was there a carding process after the cotton gin? Because the cotton gin essentially would be at least a preliminary carding process.
That removes the seed.
Right.
Right.
But it's gonna card the cotton to some degree.
Yeah, but when you're making thread, you have to
Lengthen it.
pull the fibers out so that you can start to spin the fibers. So you can work. It's easy if you're doing like one with the spindle whirl and you're just sitting with your fingers twisting the fibers in. If you ever like,
I did that once. Yeah.
Americans did, then but you get the idea. Well, in this case, you're doing it on an industrial scale, so the pull
Right.
fiber starts rolling them together.
It's interesting when in the video, when they were showing them taking the baskets up, the cotton was white and fluffy. So I'm not sure. I would think that they would have used the gin because it looks like a living history kind of area. But it was like just fresh white cotton, just all clumpied up, carried up. And then the guy would just pull, clumps of it and stick them into the box below the press till you get to a certain point, and then you work the press. The cotton it was just amazingly clean. 35 baskets.
Well, you have to go pick all that cotton first.
Yeah, somebody sure did.
Yeah,
That's
my
for
aunt
sure.
would tell me when she was a little girl and they were hard scrabbling back in the 30s, and
Picking cotton.
blood of your hands would get picking cotton.
Yeah. Cool.
Hey, Tom,
Yo,
We're gonna need to get Marty to make some figures for that cotton field. Picking cotton
oh,
over by the bridge.
yeah.
Because that's a field of very ripe cotton.
Yep. Good point. Yeah, he's probably up for it. God, if I tell him now, he might have him ready for the meet. Okay.
Now, what was the gin card by?
Well, in the cotton house, you saw those gears.
Yes.
They had, I think most of them were powered either by, if you had water, you used a water wheel.
Yes.
If not, you used a mule in that. That's why the lower portion of the cotton house is open, because you had a mule on a treadmill, smaller radius, but you had to get it turned somehow. It was either water or a mule.
Yeah, what's interesting as you say that, when you look at that image, Hollywood had been a real poor cotton mill. I'm thinking if the mule's doing the press, I wonder if that's the same mule they take in there to like do the cotton.
How rich were you?
Right, exactly. So so it's possible that photo, although there's no mule in there, that's what happens. He just gets transferred over, then they hook him up to do that. Or to your point, I can't, if I look at the picture, maybe it shows, it doesn't look like it's on a creek where there would be a mill.
If you
On
had
the picture,
moving
no.
water, you'd go
Right.
with that. But
You could also use slave power too.
yeah,
Right, that's right. Yeah, it should be a cool scene. And I'm done building for a while after that. I'm done building.
for a while.
Right. Yeah. More locomotives to build. I bought one of those Maxon motors for like $80. Oh, I was talking to the dude on the phone today and he said, look, if it doesn't work or what have you, just send it back and we'll refund your money. He's like, great, that works for me. So I'm going to try this new motor, which hopefully is the same thing that I've been using, but it's just gone way up in price. But it should work. Anybody building or researching anything these days? Damn.
Well, I just said,
Oh.
the hay box in Alexandria,
What's that, babe?
the hay docks in Alexandria.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
You got the trains going, I've got the quartermaster map shows the entire yard layout there. The location of the scales, the sinks, which are not sinks, but those are big latrines.
And you're talking 1860s when they were doing this?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the, you've seen, I think I've shown some of the
Oh,
pictures.
yes.
Yeah, that's
yes.
that's the quartermaster hay barns, which were supplying, which is where they were collecting the hay to go down to City Point.
Got it.
Via.
I have a
transshipping through there.
right. So, from an operations standpoint, and I would just like to hear from you guys that are here, what would be a plausible random element, especially for guys that have been here, because you know how the railroad runs, that would be something I could include? I've got a list of about 20, but I'm always hearing or thinking of new ones that are relevant. Because some of these, like when Bernie says you got to wait 15 minutes, like, whoa, I guess we could do that.
Now,
No.
Soap in your water.
Do what, Joel?
Bath soap in your water.
That's
There, just a second. There's a rule. Therefore, somebody did it in a water tank. They would bathe or wash clothes, and that got bath soap into the boiler, which foams and puts. You have to shut it off, and you have to flush the boiler. right after a water stop.
Yeah, man, that's great. That's great. I love that. I'm gonna okay, talk among yourselves. I'm gonna enter that into my list.
That is just such a good joke.
Sometimes you could have individuals taking baths in the water tanks, and so the water tanks themselves would already have the soap in it.
Yeah, it was contaminated. And so when you put that in your loco, it foamed. Then you had to drain the water tank and drain your loco. And then
Petticoat Junction.
I was
yeah,
about to say that.
I'll let you guys consider what the young ladies were wearing while they took their baths.
They're undergarments.
I'm certain.
What's
Well,
that?
based on my operating experience on different layouts, waiting in any place for 15 minutes is conducive to people getting sidetracked into side conversations.
Oh,
So
I agree.
for
Yeah.
me, 15 minutes is just too long. I found 30 seconds for filling up with wood and 30 seconds for filling up with water to be plenty of time.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I was thinking of something where the penalty. That's why I like the one about the intoxicated engineer. You have to move a train versus just wait. And I was looking at like penalties where there had to be some movement. Like, and I'm thinking, there's a good one about how an officer demands that you leave 2 cars of feed, and that wasn't on your train order. So
I was on an Amtrak one time that developed a problem with a truck on one of the cars. And we wound up having to proceed at 10 miles an hour to the next town and set out the car. That's a good one.
That is.
I
Right.
know a lot of times we're talking about, different things of operations and all that. Let me share this. It's sort of an interesting setup for be interesting to figure out exactly how the operation for this was. Basically, they had 2 tracks, two narrow gauge tracks on the sides, and then you had
standard.
You had standard gauge on one side, and then you had whatever your extra gauge, either broad or narrow gauge, would be on the other side. And they would put down the trucks of what they want, what you wanted. Then you can see the small.
Fascinating.
And that's how they got. Instead of unloading and loading cars, they went this direction. But it wound up not very practical when they started introducing air brakes.
This is 1870s, Eddie?
1876.
Yeah, I think it was originally.
There it is. Got it. Yep.
Was that's when it originally started, and I think East Broad Top was, I think, the last one to use one until 1956.
Interesting. Wow.
I have a question.
Sure.
If the engineer was too intoxicated
Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
exactly. There you go, DC.
to run the engine forward, who ran the engine backwards to the last station?
Fireman and conductor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would think
I got you covered on that, brother. Ain't no way you're gonna be wiggling. No way.
Tom, we're only running 2-man crews.
Right. Exactly.
So you have to
happens to
hand
the
the
fireman?
throttle to the other man on the 2-man crew, right?
That's right. That's why when I set these up, I am, instead of asking people where they want to be, given the random event, I know who's going to be on that train.
Now, you did have, I think you had the one last
Not-
time where an officer wanted to be picked up for a special thing and
That's
demanded
right.
his orders take priority over the actual train orders.
That's right. Yep. That's one of my next ones to use. And again, it's, so what I'm thinking on that one is they got to take them someplace and drop them off. But who makes the decision? I mean, do you wait for, I don't know, the superintendent? I mean, what do you do with that? So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to leave it up to the engineer. Because bottom line, you want it to be fun. However, I know there was a couple of guys last time that were here that they didn't reverse the train. Now their excuse was there was a train in front of them. So, okay, I don't know. But yeah, as long as the trains are moving in those events.
You could have someone stopping the train to fish off the bridge.
Yeah, there's one in there too about, yeah. DC, you're my friend.
Now, here's a question. What happens if the conductor's the one that's intoxicated?
From what I've read, most of the time, or I don't know of a time that happened. It was usually the brakeman, the fireman, and the engineer. But of all of them, I think it was rare that they'd all be intoxicated. And I think it was the engineer more than when I'm reading some of these, whether it's Bell or the train running for the Confederacy. They were talking about how the conductor was sober, the engineer was drunk, and the fireman was ready to jump off the train. I was like, oh, Jesus, what a circus that must have been, man. I just can't, wow, yeah.
Too bad.
Especially when you know stuff is going to blow up, you know, and somebody's dying probably every day from some train-related thing. Why the hell would you want a job with those guys?
Too bad you're not in a more modern era. There's a small town Amtrak station in Missouri that has a Coke machine on the platform. And I've seen a BNSF freight stop. Somebody get off the engine and go over and buy Coke out of the machine, get back on the freight and leave.
That's great. So I'm going to have one where it's like something where the engineer is somebody, they stop to pick stuff up, and there's a keg of whiskey that's got to go with them.
One thing I've heard going food wise is if it was known the train was going to have to stop in the middle of nowhere for overnight, nearby
Right.
farmers on the train's right of way would plant stuff. And then during the summertime, they literally go out and harvest fresh food. And in the wintertime, the trainmen would leave out small buckets of coal in that same area. So they'd give them coal for the winter and kind of exchange, sort of.
Right. I get that. Yep.
Well, this is more modern, but I've heard that there was this station that when they stopped having the mail contracts, of course they stopped using mail cars, and eventually, I think, from my understanding, the station was replaced with the McDonald's, but they still had the apparatus for the mail hook.
Mm.
And what they wound up doing is they would call ahead, because this was in the 70s. They didn't have cell phones, but they would call ahead to McDonald's, put their order in. They would do the entire thing. They would hook up the order onto the mail thing, and the train would come by. You know, somebody would be hanging out, grab the food and all that, and in the meantime, someone else is tossing a the small bag of money out there to pay for it. They didn't even have,
Exactly.
Well, Walter.
I love it.
Yeah, on the receiving end of this one. Union Pacific, there's a place the engineers like to get their food at in Humble, and they'll stop their train there, and it backs up all the way through Kingwood stops. So people can't get on Interstate 69.
Well, I took a stop in Spring, Texas. It seemed like every 20 minutes a freight was going through. I was impressed the amount of
Yeah.
traffic.
Oh, just a minute. You get on the industrial side of Houston, you will see miles of operating rail. Literally, because this is the largest manufacturing area, I think, in the US is Houston, Harris County. I'll say Harris County because I live in the wilds of Harris County, about a block from you. So it still goes on today. But I'm saying,
Yeah.
so you could have a stop. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your compressed block, honey?
Hey, Dan,
30 seconds,
Yes, sir.
5 minutes.
was there some, I thought I saw you trying to show us something. What were you trying to show us?
Tom asked what you were working on. And I bought a $6 MTH wooden water car, and I've got about $34 worth of parts on order and that sort of thing to make
Cool.
it a little more presentable.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about, guys, you guys give me so many ideas. From an ops standpoint, you know, it's funny trying to coordinate the trains for the timing, you know, and I've changed it at least 3 times. And it was funny because on, you know, the first 2 times, there seems to be this cluster that occurs in Kingston.
Every time.
I know, and I changed the schedule for that. Things that happened this time. I was hysterical. Oh, it was too funny. I'm like, I think I'm just gonna quit. I'm just gonna put in whatever numbers for the schedule, and I'm sure one of these times it won't be in Kingston that you all get hung up there. That was too funny.
Well, you know, I think part of the reason for that is that's the only one that in the past op sessions that we've actually interchanged cars. I know we did it once in Dalton for the East Tennessee and Georgia, but you usually, when you're doing interchange with other lines, it's always at Kingston. And that's
Right.
a little more complicated.
That's true because of the why. Yep, that's exactly right with that why. Yep. Yeah, you know, well, once this 3-way gets settled in Atlanta, there'll be many more opportunities to do that kind of work there. So I'm figuring that's going to be some of the bleed off. And then what's always fun is I haven't even used the backdrop yet. The staging tracks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
That would be fun to have a consist of, I don't know, war material that came in on one of your lines and had to be added onto a train. Dalton would be the place for that, I would think.
well, if they're coming out of the backdrop, that would be from the Nashville, Chattanooga, or Memphis and Charleston. And I believe from the Memphis and Charleston, they delivered coal, and we could just say other war materials. And from Nashville, God, I think Nashville was gone by then. Nashville was gone in '62, wasn't it?
Well, what I'm my thinking behind that is it wouldn't matter whatever material came in on the East Tennessee and Georgia, whatever it is, that would be the place, because Chattanooga, you're making up trains as it is, so there wouldn't be anything particularly special or different or out of the ordinary about it. Whereas Dalton, you've got through trains going.
Yeah. Right. So Chattanooga theoretically, I mean, Chattanooga was a little bit of a bottleneck the first time when Jimmy was here running the yard. And because it took 35 minutes longer for them to do the building of the train that I had anticipated. Yep. And they kept on hitting that switch without it being aligned. And I found, that's where, at least at that point, that's where I found the shorting happening the most, is when the operator isn't looking at the alignment of their tracks and they move on to a switch and it shorts. But the switches are not just where the switch occurs, it's the whole turnout. So there's inches on either end that you might think that you're clear, but you're not. All these little things, it's fascinating.
Yes. Speaking of little things and all that, when did they go from this style of tank car to the horizontal, from vertical to horizontal?
You've got the same style. I would guess that by the late 1870s, they were starting to introduce steel horizontal.
Okay.
I think the
That's just a
Dinsmore tank cars, which are the vertical tanks, not the
cars,
horizontal tanks. I think that they were introduced in 1865.
Yeah, that sounds
Really?
about
So that if you're doing the Civil War, you're not
yeah.
legally you couldn't use a horizontal.
Right, you're
tank
shipping
car.
things in barrels in the Civil
Yeah.
War.
Yeah.
The thing that I was wondering though, with those Mantua tank cars, did they even exist during the 1860s?
The water cars
Yeah.
are the ones that if you go look at the construction of the Transcontinental, that's where you'll see them. Okay.
They would have been on the W&A then, right?
That
Oh,
would have been on the Union Pacific line because they had to bring water out to a lot of spots where they were laying track because they
Yeah,
had wells. So I think that's really the origin of that particular car, is the
right.
Pacific water car, and that was just that was during the construction phase. And
Right.
to take water out to some of their stations before they got wells in.
Yep.
And-
Yeah, I was thinking for Mantua, they probably extended that to other lines just to give them more variety.
they could sell more cars.
Yep. Poetic license there. Commercially poetic.
You can make it into a Dinsmore if you want to do, Pennsylvania.
I don't know what that is.
That was a hopper car, wasn't
Dinsmore
it?
car is there. It's 2 barrels. It is. DC was just talking about it. It's a oil tank car that came out in '65. So yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Oh, look at that. Damn, man. You got, well, I tell you, man, I'm going to put you on deck for a presentation in a few months. You'll be our Christmas.
You have to realize we were exporting barrels of oil during the Civil War.
Right.
And one of the reasons the loss of the whaling fleet didn't hurt that much.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was, and it didn't recover after the war because the crude oil was replacing it, lamp oil.
And was cheaper.
It was cheaper. It was
Easier to process and get.
Yeah, and you got to, man, the overhead in whaling was pretty good, was pretty big. I don't know what percent of the ships never came back.
Right, less risky.
Yeah, a lot less risky. So, but that industry, you can do a little bit of it during the Civil War. DC can on upper Delaware because we are moving barrels of oil, literally flat cars with barrels of oil.
Right. Yeah. There was a model railroad article in the 70s, I believe.
Yep.
They did Pennsylvania, and they had an oil rig, and they had cars loaded with barrels of oil. Yes, it's a great article. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, you can do that if you're modeling east, because you'll have the early fields up in Pennsylvania.
East
Wow.
of the Mason-Dixon. John White goes into that in his American Railroad Freight Car.
Yep.
He gives you a fairly decent rundown of, and unfortunately, it all just kind of starts off after the Civil War.
Right.
Most of it, like Joel said, Pennsylvania was kind of the seed that started it.
Yeah.
Kickstarted it.
There are records of trains during that period. It was beginning, but it's very limited. It's not like a national kind of a thing. It's very much regional.
Right.
But if you're modeling Pennsylvania, if you're modeling Gettysburg or any of the lines, you could actually probably sneak by with a couple of those cars. Flat cars.
Now, were they flat cars or gondolas?
Well,
They
a
were-
flat
they were-
car a flat car becomes a gondola when you put
Right, stakes in the,
stakes in the pockets and a couple of boards. I don't think they called them gondolas. In most of the equipment records, they're marked as flat cars.
So is it, it's probably very naive of me to think this, but that's okay. Gondolas, did that have anything to do with the gondolas of Italy? Any remote connection there? Gondolas?
You said it differently.
Gondolas.
Gondolas, right. Yeah.
I don't know, you'd have to look you'd have to get an etymological dictionary on that.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
And they didn't have them during the war. They just called them platform cars, right?
Or coal cars or whatever they.
Well, you have dedicated coal cars, hoppers.
Yes, but in some of the ORERs, you'll see them described as coal cars, and they're actually gondolas. That's on the lines out west, at least.
Yeah, and the Central U.S. Military Railroad lines only documents flat car. They do have stock cars, but they only have like 5 stock cars. And after a while, when I started looking to photo evidence, I think those stock cars were used to haul oxen, because you usually see them at wreck sites or at construction sites, pulled in with a line of office cars and some hay. So I have a feeling that what the pure stock, when they moved cattle, like during the movement from Brandy Station, when Grant switched around to head up to start the campaign towards Petersburg, the end of the war, and they moved the whole army out. Basically, all they did was take flat cars and slap some stakes in there and some boards on it to move the cattle, because which was an unusual operation, because normally they'd walk the cattle and not load them on cars.
So Joe, question. You ever see that Mort Kunstler photo? Jackson is loading his troops up and there's a flat car and they're walking horses onto the flat car, and it has like 4-foot stakes and they're just connected with rope. Would they have transported them? Like they would have, no kidding.
The train wasn't going to go very fast.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Was not practiced. That was moving. That was probably moving just some very special horses, because normally you'd walk a horse because you get there just about as fast as the train.
Yeah, your train with horses on a flat car with nothing but rope and stakes in the stake pocket. You're not doing more than 10 miles an hour. And
Right.
do more than that.
You got troops hanging off the tops of cars too. They're moving piles of soldiers faster than walking.
For the most part, the soldiers marched, as I understand it, and it was the specialized equipment, the high value stuff that went by rail.
That is absolutely correct. There are a couple of operations though, which is what I'm here with that.
When they made actual troop movement.
Swiftly you were moving large numbers of troops and they crammed them on the cars and everything like that. And those trains probably did not exceed. That was why I said they're not going to exceed 10 miles an hour. They're loaded with people, and you don't want to destroy your army. There's that movement.
Yeah.
There's McCollum's movement out towards Chattanooga, in which there's some. Longstreet did another one, but those are very, very rare.
And prisoner of war. They were shipped by trains.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
it was easier to keep.
But we don't care so
Keep
much
control.
about them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I said, but we don't care so much about them.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's why they were in boxcars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Run it at 25 miles an hour, lose a couple of teeth. Yes.
You gave me another idea for an ops element, which is the train is hauling horses and their top speed is step 5. And that I like that. That's a nice little control element.
It is, but that's not like a regular operational thing, because that was like when I was looking and I suddenly realized that the count on stock cars was not enough to actually move stock. That was for railroad property, that was for oxen.
Yep.
Or some draft horses, but that was construction crews animals.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at Black's book, and he did something about, he analyzed both movements, the 12th Corps to Tennessee and Longstreet's Corps to Tennessee. And I believe the Union consists had horses that they were hauling. What I want to go back and look is if he mentions anything about the speed, like how much that might have impeded their ability to move fast.
Well, Tom, in that instance, the horses were probably part of the artillery train, would be my guess, because you want your horses there so that artillery can go. And they may actually have been, have you heard the term of a combination car in relation to freight cars?
Yes.
Okay, they probably went in something like a combination freight car.
It would have surprised me if they even built like temporary stalls in those things.
Well, there are photos in the yards of cars being repaired that have had holes bashed through the sides about head high.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I know. There's lots of accounts.
The boards have been bashed out, and
Right.
they're back in to get repaired. And I have a feeling some of those were for hasty modifications.
Yeah.
Quick
Yeah.
ventilation.
Yes. Well, yeah, there's accounts where the troops just, I mean, there was one where the train came into the station and the only thing left was the frame on the car because the soldiers took all the boards off of it because it was too freaking hot. Yeah.
One cool story I read, and I don't know if this way you could work in an op session, is about a detective. And there are these grain cars. They knew how much they were filled with. By the time they finally got to their destination, they're half empty. And what they found was at a site, this is back in wooden hopper cars. And what they found was they had a bunch of cork plugs underneath. And a nearby family that was by the siding, what they would do is go in at night, drill holes at the bottom of the car and put the grain in pillowcases and stuff like that. And then when they were done, they'd plug it back up with a cork.
Wow.
And when they finally caught them, they went into their house, their mattresses, their pillows, everything was just full of grain, stolen grain.
Scoundrels.
Yes.
Where did this occur? Walt?
I can't remember. I was looking at, it's like old railroad detective stories.
Right.
Long Branch, New Jersey was where.
It had to be Long Branch.
That's probably my ancestry connection.
Has anybody in the group tried to model one of those improvised cattle cars or horse cars like Thom was talking about from the group's painting?
I started one, but I never finished it because I wanted to know if it was real.
No, because I built stock cars with oxen in them.
Right.
The bulldozers of the day.
Bulldozer. Heavy haulers.
Yeah. You know what, DC? That would be an easy one to build. I mean, that's nothing, you know?
I was thinking of that, the telegraph wire you used would be great for the string, and you could paint it. Or the rope.
Yep. Yep. I would probably use something a little bit thicker, like a thicker thread.
So if
But-
you painted it, it would,
Yep. Add a little thickness
because you're
to it.
talking about a car that's being handled, so if you use thread,
Oh, I
something-
see.
it probably is not as,
A little more durable.
yeah, not as durable as if you use that really flexible line.
That's a good idea. Good idea.
I could see a car, maybe two cars.
You can always run a hospital train.
Yeah, I've done that. I've got a couple of hospital cars, and hell, from what I've read, they put those guys in cattle cars.
The Confederacy usually
Two.
used box or cattle, filled it with hay and
Right.
rolled you up in a blanket and tucked you in there, and you arrived just happy as the, you know, it was probably better than the Union Army's rubber band cars, you know, because you were just in a big thing of it. They also were using Spanish moss for wounds.
Right.
It was
Right.
really pulling infection out and had a little antiseptic effect. But that's always a good train to do with the yellow flag stuck on the front.
Yes. Yes. I like that. Dan had to leave. That's cool.
No, I'm still here.
And
Oh,
I'm gonna have to leave too. I gotta
Okay.
run. So
oh,
great evening. Thanks, everybody.
yeah. Good to
Hey,
see you
take
guys.
care.
Take care.
Okay, text when you get down here.
Bye, guys.
It sounds like Houston area is gonna be the hot spot. Because Joel, you're down there,
Whoa.
and
Yeah.
Roger Rossi.
You know, I
Down
think we
that
ought to
area?
do our 2024 meet in Houston.
Okay.
Joe, all you got to do is find a Civil War layout we can come play on.
Work's cut out for you.
Oh,
Jim.
everybody has to bring a module.
Oh, that's a great idea. And there's plenty of time. How many modules do you have now?
We've got 2 out in California. And I've got Paul's, I've got Paul's here. And mine and Bernie's.
Paul who? Oh, Dobbs. Yes. I was going to say, not Sismaluski.
Paul Dobbs.
Yeah.
So total, we got about 10.
So I've got a corner one. You could
a
use
corner.
that?
Yes, we can use that.
Okay.
But what I'm talking about is everybody gets to build a T-track module.
You know what I would like to propose?
The NMRA and that, and put it at our SIG booth.
Yeah, I think,
It is just to show you modeling skills, and I know you guys have.
yeah, and they're not that hard to
modeling
do.
skills. Can't wait to see the.
You know what, Joel, I'm gonna make that a topic for one of the upcoming Zooms, T-track.
Yeah.
And you could talk about what it is and with the intention that, you know, we try to get to Houston in 24.
Yeah, and that would be good because we do that, and I can probably get my buds down here in the Houston area T-track.
Cool.
Except they're of course more modern, but you know.
Oh. Well,
But-
I like it. We got something going on here.
And go to Papa Ben's and run on the big in-track layout.
Excellent. Cool.
Okay. So
I love it.
yeah, and there's and I got to tell Walter there is a Kingwood train club here at Mike's Hobby Center down about a mile from here.
Oh, there's a train club that you, oh, okay. Cool. Good.
A lot of train clubs down here, but.
That's right.
Yeah, so, yeah. The problem is that, that Houston, of course, their symbol is a locomotive. But Houston being an industrial city that rebuilds over all the older industry. So it's hard to find things that touch.
Right.
Our time period would be Allen's Landing, and there's a set of railroads that spoke out from Houston, but
Right.
most of that stuff, and
Oh, long time. Yeah.
The train tracks are where they were in the Civil War going by here, but they're now high-speed concrete ties.
One of the things we're going to be doing at Charlie's, and they've responded, is his local NMRA division. Some of the guys would like to come and operate. So we'll have some new folks in the mix. And I think it'd be great for Charlie to connect to those guys, because I found it to be so helpful in all the possible things you can think about if you have a model railroad. So I'm thinking, again, assuming 24 is Houston, we might want to reach out to the local NMR guys and maybe go visit one of their places.
Yep. Well, that was actually Houston Area T-Track is NMRA.
Who is?
The Houston Area T-Track Club is an all NMRA club.
Fabulous.
Oh yeah, they're an all NMRA. You get the insurance
Mm-hmm.
through the
That's
NMRA.
big. That's big. The
Yeah,
thing is,
and of course, I represent you to the NMRA.
absolutely,
right now.
absolutely.
I've followed that so well for so many years. But
Do you know if as you were saying that about insurance, I've never heard anything about anyone having a claim. Of course, we probably wouldn't. It would be a local thing.
It would be a local thing. The point of it is that if you're doing a train show,
Right.
with the public,
Yep.
that's when you need.
Yeah, and I was just wondering. Yeah, I get that.
And when I put my layout out, I'm putting it out with an NMRA club as part of the club.
Does that insurance cover damage on your layout?
I have it's more liability.
That's what I figured. Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know of any claims that have ever been made though on anybody for liability.
Put on national train shows. I haven't ever had one come in. I have run into folks that have had them done. It's always going to be something.
Got it. Yeah.
Somebody hurt. That's what. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Liability insurance. Cool. All right, guys. Anything else?
Nope.
Corey, where are you? You here still?
Yes, sir. Right here.
All right. Oh, how are you making out? Did you recover?
Yeah. I mean, I was the only one who wasn't drinking anything there. I was the real pumper. So I remember every second.
Oh, okay. All right. I want to talk to you offline about, did you hear about this Maxon motor I picked up? No worries. I'll talk to you because I want to talk to you about,
I heard you say you got one and $80-something, but
and I've got
I'm curious as to exactly which one it is.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about that offline.
All right.
Cool. Guys, great to see you as always. Thanks for the conversation. It's always a lot of fun. And the one good thing about this one, I decided to do a presentation. I get stuff done. So thank you. All the best.
Yeah.
Good night.